I am Juthica Stengl. I come from Calcutta, and I was born in Calcutta in an area called Entali. Some people called it Intali, and it had a mixed population of Muslims and Hindus and very few Christians. And I was one of those minorities there in Calcutta. But there were several churches and schools around, missionary schools around that area. In 1946, I was 12 years old, and I was going to a boarding school which was not in our area, and that was in Calcutta but on the other side, south side of Calcutta, and that was a missionary boarding school. And we came home only once a month on weekends, and then big holidays. And in 46, my mother was pregnant with her last child. And just then in 46, Calcutta started to get restless, and a lot of religious conflict started to show up. In 1946, about in the summer, that we started feeling the tension. But my family being Christian, we thought we would be safe. Neither the Muslims nor the Hindus will attack them or harm us. My father was very well known in the neighborhood, and we knew a lot of people from both communities. So in 46, when first rioting started, I remember it was summer vacation, so all of us, my sisters and brothers, we were all home from boarding schools. And it started very slowly, but every night, very late at night, we could hear at a distance Muslims coming down the street shouting Allahu Akbar, and everybody was getting very, very tense, thinking that they're coming, because we specifically lived in a Hindu neighborhood. I think we were only Christian family in that neighborhood. And it seemed every night the sound was coming closer. And the next day I would see in the paper that there was rioting, some houses burned, a couple of people died. And my father seemed quite concerned. But he was always outside in the evening trying to calm people down. And next thing I knew, one night, one family came to our door with my father, and they were Muslims. And the Muslim family figured that we being Christian, we will be safe, and if we hide them in our house, they won't be in any kind of trouble. So my mother wasn't too happy about all these strange people coming into our house, but she didn't say no. They came and they occupied one room. And then a little later, a Hindu family who lived right on the main street, they came over and wanted to be in our house. So our house became a center of different religious people gathering there. And there were a couple of Christians who also lived on the main drag. They were also afraid, so they came to our house. So we had about 40 people living in our house, and the house wasn't very small, very big. And it being summertime, people could just be in the courtyard, and some people brought their own blankets and sheets, and so they just camped down in the courtyard. And my two brothers were a little older than me, and I had two younger sisters. They were quite a bit younger. And my brothers wanted to go out with my father to see what's going on, because my father wouldn't let them. And it went on a couple of nights. Then one of the people on the street, he had a tea shop. He was a tea vendor. He got very drunk, and he went walking toward the crowd of Muslim people coming to the Hindu section, and he got stabbed to death. And that kind of really put a big dark shadow on everybody, that one of us that everybody knew was killed. We had more rioting and burning down houses and stuff was pre-Independence Day, or 1947 August was when the Independence Day declared, but most of the trouble was before that, and everybody lived in terror that the whole neighborhoods would be burned down, and a lot of Muslims got killed too. So we were all feeling very uncomfortable, and I remember my parents talking about independence and paying what price. All these innocent lives are getting wasted because we want independence, and the British are doing this to us. And Calcutta being close to then East Pakistan, refugees had already started coming from East Pakistan and landing on streets. Many Hindu families were moving in to the streets, and vacant land everywhere you could see refugees. But just before independence, for a few months, things had come down a bit. And at one point then, Mahatma Gandhi was in Calcutta and he was fasting, pleading with the Calcutta population to not to do what they were doing and to calm down, and he was preaching his non-violent movement, and didn't seem like many people were listening to him. But then when he really started fasting, then people got concerned that he may die and it will be blamed on the Bengalis, because Bengalis were still hanging on to their pride. We are Bengalis and we are not going to let Mahatma Gandhi die in our part of the world. And we every day would hear stories about how many people were killed where, how many houses got burned. And a good friend of ours, the man of the house, he was quite well known. He was also stabbed to death. And he was just walking through a neighborhood where there a lot of Muslims lived. And these incidents, they are not little incidents, even though compared to what was going on in Punjab and those areas, we knew a few people were killed, but still it left very deep impression on all of us. And okay, that was kind of neutral to all religion. He was Christian, went to church, but he accepted whoever came in contact with him. But after this rioting started, and a couple of people we personally knew who got killed, I felt my father's attitude toward the Muslims was changing a little. And I remember my sisters and I was only 12 years old, even I were discussing with my father that Hindus are killing too. We don't know Hindus which Muslims they killed, but it was going both ways. It wasn't just the Muslims were killing the Hindus. And my father to a degree would agree to that yes, true, we didn't know any Muslims who were killed. But since it was close to home and Hindus were getting killed by the Muslims, we didn't know. Everybody's trying to blame it on them, on the Muslims. And the few Muslims we knew, we even sheltered them. So my father was sort of full of contradiction. Here we had two Muslim families living near our house, and at the same time he was saying, oh, all these Muslims, they are doing all the killing and they're the cause of all the trouble. And I remember my oldest sister saying, if you really want to put blame on anybody, you should blame the British. They really instigated this partition, dividing the country on religious line. Naturally, nobody wants to leave their home country and go to another place. And that's what the cause of all this Hindu-Muslim trouble. If India was not divided in Pakistan and in India, but nobody came up with a solution, what would have happened if the British didn't divide the country? Because even before independence, there were pockets of areas where there were trouble all over India between the Muslims and India. So it didn't seem like to me at that age that it could have been prevented. Oh, I started talking about my mom. I remember she was in labor and she had to go to the hospital in 46, August. And no ambulance was available to come to get her, and people were still fighting on the streets. But my father went and managed to get a policeman who brought an ambulance. And the ambulance had blood from the bodies, dead bodies, and the people who were hurt. They were taken to the hospital. And my mother went in that ambulance to the hospital. And I was only 12. It was pretty scary. We were wondering if my mother was going to be able to come home. And she gave birth in the hospital and came home the same night, because my little brother, who was born then, he didn't survive. He died at home after 10 days. And to take him to the cemetery to bury him was another huge problem, whether there would be any hearse available to take him, or my father and other relatives would have to carry him in their arms. And I don't exactly remember whether there actually hearse came to take him to the cemetery. Most likely yes, but a lot of the family members, men, all went to the cemetery. None of the women went to bury him. And that, of course, was a kind of side issue. It had nothing to do with the rioting. Only thing was that worry about how they were going to take my mom to the hospital or take my brother to the burial ground. So I have those memories pretty strong in my mind.